Welcome to the Genius Talk podcast. I'm your host Atul Raj, and today we have David Lusk with us. David, welcome to the podcast.
Honored to be here.
Awesome. So, for our listeners who don't know you, can you tell them who you are and what do you do?
Sure. I'm David Lusk. I'm the managing director of Evergreen Sales Group. We are a sales advisory service. So we help small and medium sized businesses to grow, to develop their sales teams, to define their go to market strategies. We do a lot of work with startup organizations or organizations that are interested in getting a foothold in the US.
Okay. When you said small to mid size, how much is that?
We'd like to say it's about 2 to 200 million.
Okay, I got it. So, how do you get started in sales development? What led you to focus on coaching and strategy for organizations?
It's really just my personality. It's kind of what's in my heart. So I sold for years and I was constantly working with other sales guys, mostly to develop their skills, to put deals together. Then I got very interested in behavioral science and behavioral economics. And so I started working with very large sales teams around training, how to have good conversations, how to get to the executive level. Yeah, it just kind of grew out of that. I've been in the space for about 15 years, working at different capacities. So, Salesforce transformations or individual coaching or leadership coaching is what I do a lot of, working with leaders to help them understand how to empower and develop their teams.
Okay. So can you walk us through the strategy behind the program that increased revenue run rate from 400% and deliver a 280% ROI?
Sure. The idea was a technology company. They were selling and stuck in a little bit of a transactional model. So we put in what's called a consultative practice model where they went out, met with business owners and talked more holistically around their business, trained them on very specific behaviors, how to ask different kinds of questions to create a persuasive flow to the conversation. We do a lot of work drawing out of our background in the behavioral science and the research. So not all questions have the same kind of impact. Most salespeople learn that you need to ask questions in order to sell, but actually there are different types of questions that engage the buyer differently mentally and in a sales motion. There's been a lot of work around that. So that's what we taught that created a stickiness with the relationship, and they were able to leverage that and cross-sell and upsell. And then we went back and we measured the results of those behaviors and correlated with the salespeople that adopted those behaviors, did significantly better than those that did not. And then the number lift that we got out of those kinds of conversations created a tremendous ROI for the organization.
Okay.
So I can build on that. So part of the talking holistically about the business, the technology helped address, it was from a payments and cash flow perspective. And so they looked at things that were like in the inventory, looked at their marketing plans and how they engaged previous customers, how they acquired new ones, how there was wasted money sending reps too far away from the central base. So we just basically did a lot of paper pushing, number crunching around what would work and educated the reps on basic business acumen, business management practices so that they could have better discussions with the prospect. So instead of just talking about, "Hey, we've got this tool to help you," they really got a holistic picture of the business and spoke to all of those pain points inside the business, which the business leaders really appreciated because they weren't just buying a product, they were buying a trusted advisor that
Yeah,
they
exactly.
had confidence in that could help them.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we call selling, not pitching.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right.
So, your approach integrates behavioral science with strategic sales methodology to unlock potential and drive measurable growth. So, how does that work?
Well, so we start with the concept of what's called a status quo bias that really helps a salesperson frame up an understanding of what they need to do in a sales call. So most people are resistant to change. They don't want to move off of a change. And so, depending on what you're trying to do with that customer, you either need to reinforce that behavior not to change. So, if you're in a competitive situation and you're the incumbent, want to reinforce all the different kinds of behaviors and systems thinking that the buyer has so that they're less likely to go with the competitor's lower price. Or if you're trying to bring in a new concept into the organization, you want to really talk about the value to shift and the cost of staying where you are. So it's helping salespeople understand where the buyer is in a decision and is it that you need to do with the conversation in order to get them to move one way or the other, to either reinforce or to change vendors. So
Yeah.
that's just, the using basic science, to talk about how people are persuasive. So Robert Cialdini, for example, talks a lot in his Science of Influence. It's working with those types of bias on your buyer. If I give you something, now you feel a little obligated to give something back in return. If I treat you in a certain way, in a special way, then you are more likely to give more rather than just kind of a normalized.
Yeah, I think it's called the law of reciprocity.
Yeah, you got it. You
Okay.
got it.
So, how do you help organization bridge the gap between marketing and sales to achieve superior performance?
That is, yeah. So that's always a moving target, right? So marketing is generally identifying who your customer is going to be, what their problems are, what are they trying to do and solve for, and then creating, groups and segments based off of what their predisposition to buy is to what you have the ability to offer. From there, the person is really connecting what I like to call kind of like the last mile. So like in telecom, you have this last mile connection. You know that you've got a customer that may be interested and you're just trying to really help them understand what it is that they can do by acquiring your solution, your technology, whatever it is. So they work in combination together. They need to create a good seamless alliance, and the customer in their journey probably already knows by now what it is that you do and how you do it. They just need the reinforcement and an understanding of how they acquire that and take that in. What are they going to be responsible for, and what is the company going to be responsible for? So that's a lot of action of the salesperson is really helping them understand, talking through the implementation, how that would work, who they would work with, giving them the framework to make that decision, helping them understand what other competitors are out there, the strengths and weaknesses. So the salesperson has a tremendous responsibility to carry that value out to the customer because they're in the market all the time and they're talking to customers and vendors all the time. So they know what the competition is doing. Whereas marketing a lot is just attracting those customers to pay attention. Critical role, you're not going to get the conversations if you don't have good marketing that, kind of gets out into the marketplace, gets out there and, says, hey, look at me, notice me. We've got something really special going on over here. There's all kinds of different techniques to do that. So, yeah, it just kind of depends on your budget. The more money you have, usually the faster you can go. The leaner you are, the more work you're going to have to do yourself. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, of course. So, you read a lot of books, right? So, are there any particular book that have saved your thinking or methodology?
Yeah, so I always recommend a book called Spin Selling, which is a consultative sales study. So pretty much every modern sales methodology is based off of the work that Neil Rackham and his team did. I also like some of the work done by Cialdini, obviously, and then Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow.
Okay. I read the second one, but haven't the first and the third one. Maybe I should try it.
Okay. Yeah, you should definitely try it. So spin selling is a selling methodology. I talked about this a little bit earlier. It's what we used in this company. SPIN is an acronym for situation questions, problem questions, impact questions, and need payoff questions or solution questions. So If I'm a salesperson and I'm asking you situation questions, I'm looking for data. If I'm asking you a problem question, I'm asking you to evaluate that data. If I'm asking you an implication question, I'm asking you what's the implication of that problem that you're experiencing? And then the need payoff helps me understand how do you want to receive a solution? How do you want to try to solve this problem? So it's typical consulting, behavior. The big deal is it's empirically based. So what the organization did is went out and observed over 35,000 sales calls and the buyer seller interaction and identified consistent behaviors that sellers did that had a positive or an effective outcome. And from that, they observed that these types of questions surfaced regularly in more effective calls. So it's not a guarantee you're going to make the sale. Nobody ever should guarantee that you're going to make the sale, but it strongly increased the likelihood that you would make that sale.
Okay. Okay. What do you think? Like, what's the most common mistake organization make that stops them from growing?
That companies make or salespeople make.
Like, you can say both.
So, one of the biggest problem with salespeople and why I think many people find them annoying is they're not listening to what their customer is telling them. They really don't quite understand their own product. They just understand the fact sheet of the products or services that they're offering, and they don't understand how to translate those issues into solutions for their customers. I think with growth, with companies' growth, probably something I see regularly is the business leadership is trying to do everything themselves, and they're not bringing on specialists that have the skill sets required. I have one client I'm currently working with, for example, that the team is constantly being driven in different directions because the leader keeps changing their mind. So rather than just creating a plan and then creating an execution window, say like 90 days, and let everybody go and do that and then see the results, if it's not producing something quickly, then CEO says, okay, we're going to change the strategy here. And so it creates a lot of confusion. So hire good talent. So that is the number one challenge, I think, with every single business is you've got to hire good talent. So in the small business space, what that looks like a lot of times is an owner is doing a lot of the selling, or they've got one or two really good salespeople they're trying to go. And rather than hire someone like me who's really strong at leading and developing sales teams, they'll turn their best producer into a sales leader, which means they've taken them away from what they're really good at, which is producing revenue, and now having them work with other members of the team that don't necessarily sell in the same way or don't really understand what they're doing. So, higher specificity of talent.
Okay. What personality trait would you attribute the majority of your success to?
Grit. So, just kind of perseverance, Sales is hard, running a company is hard, and it just requires sometimes that you just kind of grit it out and stay in there, when things aren't always going your way. And I think I preach that to my companies and organizations and salespeople. It's just you're going to have to work it out. And then I think also mindset is probably another one that is incredibly huge. So I work a lot with what I call non-traditional sellers. So engineer types, professional service management consultants, those kinds of people that sell those kinds of services. So they have a hard time seeing sales as very valuable in the organization. They spend sales, it feels slimy. It's kind of, and they don't see themselves as salespeople. But when we go through some mindset exercises together, they begin to understand that selling is nothing about but offering a client help, an extra set of hands, some expertise, some specialty thinking that really helps them run the business better. I mean, even take a lawyer, for example. They have very granular knowledge in a very particular area that potentially saves the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. or protects the company from $1 million worth of lawsuits. So those types of things are oftentimes undervalued and underappreciated in professional services in terms of what they bring to the business.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's if a company is like good, they have a very good service, then it's their moral responsibility to sell their services, because if they don't, then there will be a bad company who are going to sell them.
Right. Yeah. Right. They're going to try to solve the problem. And, if you're the best at what you do, then you want to be the one to help them solve it. Otherwise, it's not going to get solved correctly, right? At the
Yeah,
end of the day.
exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of bad selling and there's a lot of bad solutions out there. But, if you believe in what you say and what you do, stand by what you do, then, you can take care of these clients and you can run a very profitable business.
Yeah. Okay, so for our listeners who want to know more about you and want to connect with you, where can they go?
Probably a good place to kind of get a good idea is the website. So it's evergreensales.group is a good place, or they can contact me via email at Dr. Lusk at evergreensales.group. So it's pretty straightforward. We're happy to have a conversation and just see, give you our thoughts about a pathway forward for whatever you're wanting to do.
Awesome. So, is there anything else that you would like to share?
I would say probably never let up the gas on your sales and outreach. No matter what the market is doing, always be in the market. So it's the only way that you'll really survive. Don't fall for gimmicky kind of sales stuff. Just because someone has sold a lot in the past doesn't mean that they're the right hire for you. You really need to be thinking about what kinds of talent or skills that they're bringing to your own organization. So, and again, it just goes back to some are more predisposed to leadership and some just go out and like to sell. And they all have their strengths and weaknesses. And that's what we can talk about when you call.
By the way, like, can you tell us, like, what's the best case study you guys have created?
Geez, the one that I like, well, there's two of them, different sides of the same client, but one of them we found them about $500 million in untapped potential by just looking at the way they were approaching their sales conversations. There was a lot of money tied up in the organization, and they just needed to cross sell and upsell to bring them into the marketplace. And then the other one was with a fintech company that I think we referenced earlier, where they got a tremendous ROI. They needed to improve revenue 15%, and that was on a $500 million budget. And then they needed to stop attrition of their customer base by they were losing 15% of their customers, every year, and constantly having to replenish that. So we went through a sales transformation process. They got a ridiculous amount of ROI on every dollar invested. We invested in leadership. We did it right. So we had the permission to do it right. We took everybody through a behavioral assessment center. So it was a lot of fun. We could fine tune managers. We could fine tune the salespeople. Um, yeah, and they've been rocking ever since. So that was 10 years ago. So they're up to about 1 billion now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
Okay, David, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.